Hi! Welcome back to the Bearded Architect Designs channel. I'm Alex, and today we are building something very special for a very special someone to me. So my girlfriend is a teacher, and she's going back to school to get her master's degree, which I am very proud of her and very excited for her. She will be starting school this summer, I believe, and so she actually asked me to build her a bookshelf. Kind of like a fun tree design, I guess. She sent me some ideas on Pinterest, and I found a few that, that seem pretty simple, and she doesn't need that much of a bookshelf, but her birthday's also coming up, so I'd like to have this done before her birthday. Because her birthday's coming up, and I love her so much, and that she is going back to school. All those things coming together, and I'm going to be the good boyfriend that I am, and build her a nice little tree bookshelf. And I'm going to do it within hopefully a day or two, depending on how fast it takes the stain and the top coat to dry. But so enough of the lovey-dovey stuff. Let's get to it. What you'll need is 2 sheets of 2x4 ply material, so 2 foot by 4 foot material, not 2x4, and just some screws. I have 2.5-inch screws here. They're just indoor screws, not outdoor, and they all have a Torx head, basically a 6-sided star instead of a regular Phillips or flathead. And so basically we'll rip everything to, I'm ripping everything right now at 8 inches, so 8 inches would be the depth of the entire bookshelf. So after you rip everything to 8 inches, I will keep it on the table saw and run the crosscut sled on it and basically cut out all the lengths of the wood I need. Everything's going to be 8 inches in width because of the depth of the bookshelf, and I'll need 5 of them cut at 16 inches. I'll need 1 of them 36 inches for the spine, and I'll need 1 of them 8 inches for the there's a little piece at the bottom that's going to be 8 inches that'll hold up the other pieces up. I'll show you what I mean in a second. Here I'm just going to be laying out everything for you to see so you know what pieces I'm talking about and how to cut out everything. So these 2 pieces actually need a little bevel to sit flat on the base piece. So I'll show you how I do that. So basically I just set up my table saw with the riving knife as the only guard on the blade, just because that front guard and the little teeth on the back aren't going to actually be able to be held in place there. So the only kind of preventative measure that I have here is that riving knife right behind the blade, which will keep my wood from slipping or getting caught and causing any pushback. There's that bevel. So I want to do that with the 8-inch piece and one of the 16-inch pieces so they can sit flat on the base when they sit on it at a 45-degree angle. Alright, so once you get everything cut out, I basically just kind of give everything a once-over with the sander just to kind of get rid of that sharpness on each of the edges so you don't cut yourself when you brush up against the bookshelf. When you're sanding those beveled pieces, you don't want to sand the sharp point or the sharp edge of the bevel off, just because that'll be a fixed point where it needs to be as long as it is. And then after you sand everything out, I just dry lay everything out, and just to kind of see how the shape works. And then took some Minwax stain. I like Minwax just because it gets a really good color and it's pretty even and it works pretty well. You gotta work really fast with it though, because it'll stain something real quick and dry really quick if you use a pretty thin layer around it. This step is totally optional if you want it. You don't necessarily need to stain anything. It's still gonna be a bookshelf in the end. But my girlfriend wanted specifically something to match her desk that I made her, which is a dark stained desk. So I opted to stain all of this dark just to kind of give it that unifying look with all of her office furniture. The stain color, if you're wondering, is called espresso, so you can keep that in mind for reference. After you're done staining, you can get some dark wood glue just because it's a dark stain, dark glue to clamp together 2 pieces of wood for the base. If you wanted to, you could just use a thicker piece of wood for the base, but you would still need it at the same depth or thickness as the other pieces. So you could use like a 2x8 or a 2x10 ripped down to 8 inches and use that as your base instead if you wanted to. But for me, I'm just trying to use up all the 2 foot by 4 foot ply that I have. After you waited 24 hours for the glue to dry, you could unclamp all of your clamps for the base piece. It didn't come out as flush as I wanted it to, so I just ran everything slightly on the table saw just to get rid of all that glue that squirted out and all those rough edges that didn't come out as clean as I wanted them. So now I'm running it on the crosscut sled so that way I can get both those side edges rather than just the long edges. And then once everything is stained, except for the base, I'll go back and restain that. Just have everything dry fitted just to kind of get a good view of how things are going to work. So what you want to do is measure the midpoint lines on both edges of the wood and just kind of draw that out, and you'll have some kind of marking point to drill your holes in. And it doesn't really matter. I just center punched them about 1 inch down from the edge of the board. And if you want to, you can use tape. The pieces I'm using are going to be covered up with another piece of wood, that taller piece on the T, that will basically be just drilling right into it. A little bit of precision is required in here just to make sure that you don't veer off on the wrong side, but just because the wood is so thin. Then you want to work your way to the next piece. Also, that tall side of the T becomes the top of the T on the next point, and just basically just do what you did with the other one. It'll become a little bit more clunky as you get more pieces attached to all these consecutive T's. But basically, it's a simple process. Once you kind of get a rhythm, it'll be pretty quick, and you can kind of just run through the motions as things are going by. At a certain point, I got to a point where I couldn't get a screw gun into the piece of wood here, so I had to unscrew that one side of the T, kind of twist it out of the way, and screw in the next pieces. Sometimes a little disassembly is required for the addition of assembling more pieces. There were a few issues I had with the screw gun, or the tall part of the T piece kind of sliding off and not necessarily being right in the center. You'll want that to be in the center as best as possible. That way it can hold weight when you're adding books to it. If you kind of veer off a little bit too much, it's going to be not a strong joint, and you can't put as many books as you want on it. So make sure that's dead on if you can. And then basically just kind of dry fit everything. You see how that 8-inch piece fits in there and kind of creates a little triangle down at the base. Basically, I'm just attaching that last beveled 16-inch or 16-inch length piece just to kind of see how everything fits and how it all looks. And then you want to add your base and that 8-inch piece, and then basically I attach that through the bottom of the base. A lot of woodworkers we'll see are using a pocket hole jig. I don't have one of those. I'm just kind of freehanding a lot of what I do, which is not the best, but it's what I can do what I have. So yeah, basically just attaching all those pieces at the bottom just to kind of give them that main hold. And then I'm using another piece of, I think it's another 8-inch piece of wood that I have that I'm using as a backing piece for the little triangle drawer that I'm adding here. This little triangle drawer is totally optional as well. I'm just adding it to give a little extra something I'm making for Maya. So yeah, now I'm just kind of cutting things on the chop saw. It's a little bit of quicker cut and a little bit less prepping than doing on the table saw. And then I just took my pull saw that I have. It's one of my favorite hand tools that I have because you can just get into so many pieces without getting your hand in very precarious situations like on the chop saw or the table saw. You can just kind of cut anything out really, small, big, large, all weird shapes. And so there you go. You got that little triangle piece that you can add on the back that's going to fit perfectly there, like that. And so once you get all of that, you'll have some good guiding marks or guiding places to adjoin all those pieces, especially that 8-inch piece that really doesn't have a home just yet. So what I did was just attach it from the bottom, and eventually you will also want to attach it to that backing piece that I just cut out, like so. What I did was just kind of get those bottom screws in from the bottom, and then screw it into the backing piece, that triangle backing piece there. And then you can also screw it in from the bottom to keep the bottom from splitting out. And then I added one more screw onto the other side just to kind of give it a screw on each side of that triangle. And then I added the spine just to kind of give it a little bit more rigidity, just because it's a little wobbly right now without the spine. That spine is kind of going to give it a back, but also give it kind of extra rigidity. And so what I did was just attach it to the bottom and then just kind of eyeballing it to where those shelves are going to land and keep it about, let's say about an inch or a half inch away from the edge of the spine. This is pretty easy to do. It's once everything kind of sits pretty firmly, it becomes pretty solid. So now we're getting into the drawer setup of the little triangle drawer at the bottom that I'm making for Maya, just as a little sequin compartment. This part is totally optional. You don't need to do this if you just want to have a little triangle shelf at the bottom. I just figured it'd be a little bit more fun and give it a little extra something that, of my own making. This is like a custom piece little deal here, just adding that extra drawer that you don't really necessarily need to add. It's totally optional. If you just want to have a bottom shelf, you can totally skip this part. But basically, what I'm doing now is measuring out a drawer face, cutting out the pieces on the chop saw, and just kind of fitting them pretty cleanly. Once you get the face, I use the last piece of the 2x4 material that not 2x4, 2 foot by 4 foot ply material that I have, and just basically had a piece cut out a little bit shorter than the depth of the bookshelf, just that way it fits inside the bookshelf, and just kind of clamp that all together, making sure that the walls on the drawer weren't going to exceed the height of the little triangle edge on the bookshelf. So basically, once you get all those pieces cut out, just clamp everything together and wait about an hour, and then after that I just unclamped everything and gave everything a stain. You can probably avoid having to stain the inside of the drawer. The only thing you really need to stain is the front face, but I just like to kind of go in and make sure everything is one uniform color, or at least some kind of matching sort, just because I don't like the idea of leaving something unfinished on the inside unless it was for a certain reason. And while I stained the drawer, I also gave everything a once over stain just to kind of give it that finished look on the edge of the base there, so that base isn't an exposed white wood anymore. But I figured also the drawer itself was kind of sliding once you pulled it out enough from that triangled edge there. So I decided to add a little runners, or I guess stop blocks, to keep it from wiggling in there. So I cut out 2 smaller pieces from some leftover pieces of wood that I had from the ply, and just kind of glue that down on the outside of where that drawer edge is. So put one piece there, put one piece on the other side, kind of just eyeballed it. Then I turned it over on its back and clamped it down. I didn't show you that, but that's what I did, just to kind of give it that strength there. Once it's dry, then you just slide it in and voila, perfect. And once everything is ready, I just kind of went with a spray urethane from the longboard episode. Basically, just give everything a once over, make sure to get in all those little grooves and cracks. Alright guys, at this point of the project, you're basically done. Remember to leave comments, or if you have any questions, go ahead and leave that in the comments below, and make sure to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for a little bit more that I have included here. Okay, so it's Maya's birthday finally, and I finished the bookshelf. It is sitting right here. So she kind of knows about the bookshelf, just because she kind of already was like, kind of want this for, my little area. But what she doesn't know is I have a little secret for her that I'm going to store in that little drawer. This is one of her favorite movies, Little Women. And she doesn't know that I bought it for her. So that's going to be a little bonus surprise for her. So we'll see how that... Oh, look at that. It fits perfectly in there. So, now we're gonna go reveal the present for Maya. Hey Maya.
Yes?
I have a surprise for you.
Okay. What's that?
It's a bookshelf.
Wow.
You wanna look at it?
Can you show me how it works?
You gotta come over here and play around with it.
Well, I need books.
So yeah, you put books on there?
Very nice. So they would lay like this?
Yes. Like sideways or whichever way you want.
Okay.
Whichever way is accessible.
Should I get some books to put on it?
You can look around and play with it a little bit.
Look around and play with it? It's a bookshelf.
Yeah.
How can I play with it?
There's some secret compartments.
Oh, okay. Oh, goodness. Oh, you got me Little Women, my favorite. Thank you. On Blu-ray, very fancy.
That's all they had at Target.
That's okay. When did you go to Target?
A while ago.
Wow. I got a secret compartment with some cubby holes, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. I can stash all my secret things there away from you.
Yeah.
Or away from my students. When I bring this into my class, I'll keep my chocolate in there.
Okay. As you can see, the bookshelf is getting some real good use in its new home now. It was a real fun project for me, and I think it's going to keep Maya very organized now for her semester coming up with school. Well, I'm Alex from Bearded Architect Designs, and I'll see you in the next build.